Hey guys, Joe, the Joe Madden Sports Podcast here, joined this morning by Gabby, host of the Boston Balling Podcast. Gabby, welcome to the show. How's the morning treating you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. Definitely having a good morning so far, and appreciate you having me hop on here.
I'm so excited to have you on here. I love having females in the industry. I also love hearing the stories how you got into this industry.
Yeah, sure. So growing up was always a huge sports fan, knew it was kind of something I wanted to go into. So went to Ithaca College, graduated in 2018 with a degree in television and radio. And then shortly after I graduated from college, I got a job at ESPN, working on their digital video, social media team, kind of running a lot of their social media accounts, things like that. And so was working there for about 2.5 years. And then unfortunately got laid off because of COVID. So that was really tough. But simultaneously, when I found out I was going to be getting laid off because of COVID, I decided to start my own podcast because I was like, what's something I could do to continue to grow my skills and still kind of be involved while I'm, looking for other jobs and things like that. So then I started Boston Mauling in December 2020, which is kind of crazy to think about that it's been that long already, but definitely really, really pleased with the following that it's developed in that time. I cover all things going on in Boston sports. I bring different guests on the show every week. We kind of talk about what's going on, and so it's really a good time. I get to interact with a lot of different types of people. Talk about the teams I love that I'm watching all the time on a regular basis. So definitely been a really good experience for me. I love doing the show. It's just super fun.
Excellent. Where can people find the show then?
Yeah, so it's on a lot of different platforms. You can find it on Apple, Spotify. I do a live stream on Facebook every week when the show airs, and then I download it, distribute it to all the other platforms. There's a YouTube channel as well. You can follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, so it's all over the place.
Excellent. I love it. Now let's talk. Where did your passion for sports come from, Gabby?
Yeah, so it really started with my dad and my grandfather. So I grew up about 10 minutes or so from the UConn campus. And so I grew up with my dad and my grandpa having season tickets to basketball and football games there. And so when I was a baby, I would be on their laps watching in the living room UConn basketball or going to football and basketball games. So it really started there. And then my cousins, who are big Boston sports fans, got me into the Red Sox when I was really young. So then I started watching all the Boston teams on my own. And so then it kind of just grew from there. My dad's not exactly happy about that because he is a New York sports fan.
Oh
But
no.
my cousins kind of beat him to it with that one and helped me choose the better side and guided me in the right direction. So I thank them for that every day.
I love that you're still digging at your dad on the New York side right here on the air. It's what
Gotta
families
do
do for sure.
it. Gotta do it. Gotta throw
Absolutely.
that in.
So let's talk NBA. We've got the finals going on right now. Obviously, we all know the Celtics were just completely destroyed by the Warriors last night. What
Yeah.
was your take on the first two games here, Gabby?
Yeah, sure. So going into the series, I said if they can take one of the first two games on the road, that would be huge. I wasn't asking for both, nor was I expecting them to win both, because obviously Golden State's been really dominant on the road. I mean, they were, or at home rather, they were undefeated at home in the playoffs going into the series. So they're a tough team to beat when they're playing at home. And so I said going into the series, let's just try to take one of these first two games. So that was huge, really setting the tone in game one. People looked really good. Tatum had a rough game that night shooting wise, but everybody else was contributing. And that's how the Celtics win games, is when they're all contributing as a whole unit. And you're not just relying on Tatum and Brown. And that's what was frustrating to me about game two, was those two were stepping up. And Derek White a little bit was helping too. But other than that, everybody else kind of was non-existent in game two. And that's something that they can't do. That's something the Celtics do well, is when you have other guys contributing and they have a pretty deep bench, which has helped get them here. And so it was really a lot of the turnovers and just taking bad shots, like throwing up threes when they didn't have to, and they could have been driving to the basket more. And so I'm looking at those little mistakes as kind of what helped the Warriors kind of run away with game two. I don't necessarily think that it was a matter of the Warriors playing like such a vastly better team in game two. I think it was a mix of a little bit of that, but also the Celtics just making those mistakes and just you know, not enough people contributing. So I do feel like they can bounce back at home. I think that they are going to split the 2 games in Boston coming up here, but that's why that game 1 win was huge, because if they had lost that game too, being down 0-2 is such a tough hole to climb out of. So I'm feeling okay. Definitely okay with a split, but not okay with the way that they played last night, and a lot of stuff that could have been prevented.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wednesday night, we will see game 3 here. We know the Warriors have struggled on the road. Do you think your Celtics take game 1 here, or are you looking more at game 2?
I think they take game 1 at home. I do. I think the Celtics are really good at bouncing back after they lose a game. They're undefeated after a loss in the playoffs too. And so I like that track record, obviously. And like you said, Golden State does struggle on the road. I think going into Boston, that crowd's going to be electric. I think, those Boston fans can get really into it, really passionate about it. So I think that might give Golden State some trouble at first. And I think they might start off slow in Boston. I think the Celtics are going to come in, fixing those mistakes from game 2. I think that they're going to limit the turnovers. They're going to take better shots. I think more people are going to be involved, because you look at players like Al Horford. He's done so much in these playoffs to help the Celtics get here, but he didn't have a good game last night. And so I look at players like that. I expect people like that to have a better game in game 3. Grant Williams, same thing. Even Rob Williams wasn't good last night either. Players like that, I think if they can step up in game 3, and Marcus Smart was extremely disappointing. He's a key piece as well. If he is not performing, then it's really hard for them to win games too. So I think players like that are going to step up in game 3. So I think that they do take game 3 at home and kind of set that tone in Boston.
That would be great to see them set the tone. Now, we know Tatum still had a strong game in the last game, getting 28 points and 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Are you looking for another big game out of him in the next one?
Yeah, one thing I've been missing from Tatum this entire postseason is consistency, because he'll have games like that, like he did last night, but then he'll have games where he's not making anything. And so this is really his time. If he wants to really be known as a for real superstar in this league, he needs to be able to be consistent in games like this. And so I think, it's hard for me to feel like he's going to consistently have good games like he did last night, but I do think that he will. I think, I think this is his time now. I think him and Jaylen Brown are both going to come in and, obviously be those leaders that the team needs in game 3. So I am expecting another big game from Tatum, but I am expecting it to be other people are a little bit more involved. So it's not just relying on Tatum and then everybody else.
Awesome. Now, Gabby, let's turn to your Boston Red Sox. What are you thinking of them so far this season?
Definitely frustrating. Definitely a frustrating start to the season. The month of April was not good. They started off really, really slow, and now we're kind of seeing them try to dig out of that hole that they kind of formed in April, that they dug themselves into. They had a really better month of May, a lot better month of May. Their June is starting off pretty well. They're finally at 500. They've crawled into that third wild card spot for the playoffs. So as long as they can kind of keep playing well consistently, the offense wasn't hitting in April, which was one of the biggest concerns, but they still have one of the best offenses in baseball. The bats are starting to figure it out. The starting rotation overall has not been that bad. It's really just the bullpen that is still a big, huge, glaring problem with the Red Sox right now that needs to be addressed. So I'm hoping they kind of can address that. But it's good to know that they're finally at 500. And that they are hanging on to that third wild card spot as of right now, because as long as they can focus on just, winning games, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw them get a great win yesterday against the A's, winning that one 5-2. And when we look at them today, they will be facing the Angels. Any thought they'll be going against Syndergaard here?
Yeah, this series in general is a huge series because the Angels are right behind them for that wild card spot right now. The Angels are in a really big slump right now. They've lost like 10 games in a row or something like that. So from that standpoint, I think, you have to feel good going into the series about like that, knowing you're playing a team that's slumping. I mean, Syndergaard's tough though. The Red Sox do well against good pitchers. I mean, they looked good against Frankie Montas yesterday of the A's. So I think I think, I expect the offense to keep hitting, but this is a big series coming up against the Angels. They need to win these games because if they want to kind of gain a little bit of ground in the wild card, because they're right ahead of them right now. They're like a half game ahead of them. So this is such a big series coming up here.
Yeah, and they need to break this trend. We've seen in the last 5 meetings, the LA Angels win 4 of those. So I'm rooting for your Red Sox. I really hope they're able to do well in the series against them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely, this is a big one. And I think one of the other biggest things that I will say about the Red Sox is they need to start playing better against their own division. They've lost the majority of the games against their own division this year, and that's what's kind of keeping them back right now, because their record against teams outside of the division is not terrible. It's just they did not win those early season matchups against the Blue Jays, Yankees, or even the Orioles. So I think when it comes down to it, those are going to be the games they need to win. So hopefully going forward, they have a lot of games against the Rays, Blue Jays, and Yankees in July. So I think that's going to really be a big month for the Red Sox for us to know if they really are going to be in the mix or not, if they can win some of those games against their division.
Absolutely. Well, Gabby, I really appreciate your time today. You are absolutely crushing it with your podcast, The Boston Balling. Can you tell everyone where to find it, what days it airs, and where to find you on social media?
Yeah, sure. So Boston Balling airs every Tuesday evening. I bring a different guest on every week. We talk about kind of whatever the biggest things are going on in Boston sports right now. It's obviously the Celtics, but we focus on different teams. I do a live stream on Facebook, so you can like the Boston Balling Facebook page to catch those live streams. There's also a YouTube channel. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or any other podcast platform where you like to listen to shows. You can find Boston Balling there. I also personally am on social media. Gabby Hurlbut 10 on Twitter, Gabby_Hurlbut 10 on Instagram, and the Boston Balling accounts are also linked to those as well. So pretty active on Twitter, usually tweeting, as Joe knows, a lot about Boston sports primarily, but would love to get more support on the show and would definitely appreciate people tuning in.
And Gabby, before you leave, I want to ask you, are you an NHL fan as well?
I am.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're Boston Bruins. That had to hurt, but hope for next season for sure.
Yeah, definitely was disappointing. I mean, the Bruins have been in this phase of championship now mode for a while. They have a couple veteran players. We don't know what's going to happen with them. And so the direction this team is going in is still a little bit up in the air right now, I think. But, that was a frustrating series against Carolina. I thought Carolina had a chance of winning the whole thing, to be honest with you. But then they obviously went down against the Rangers. So
yeah, I thought so as well. The Rangers have been the surprise here in the playoffs for sure.
Well, they have. Yeah, they definitely have. I think a lot of people didn't expect them to get this far. It's looking pretty promising for them to take this series against Tampa. I mean, earlier in the game yesterday, I thought that they were going to win that game. And I was like, wow, they really might sweep them. But Tampa's really good. You can't really count them out. I mean, they've won the last 2 years, the Stanley Cup. So a team like that, it's hard to really count them out. They're playing at home now. So if they take game 4 at home and even the series, that one could go really anywhere. But the Avalanche look really, really good too. So I think it's going to be really fun to kind of see how the rest of this series plays out and what happens in the finals.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. I really do hope that the Rangers knock them off here. I just don't want to see Tampa in it again as a fan, as a Calgary Flames fan. I don't know. It's a hard one. But Gabby, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining me on the Joe Madden Sports Podcast. I would love to have you as a guest again, but all the best in your show. Everyone, make sure you go check it out.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You guys, I will be back with another Joe Madden Sports podcast. Make sure you go give Gabby a follow and her show. You don't want to miss out. Thanks, guys.